question? All in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. Thank you for that. Next item, please, Madam Clerk.
This is first three readings of the Storm Drain Capital Program Loan Authorization Bylaw number 9337, and this is with regard to improvements to the storm drainage system.
Move first reading. Call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. Call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried unanimously.
Third reading.
I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. Thank you. Next item, please, Madam Clerk.
And this is first three readings of the Transportation Capital Projects Loan Authorization Bylaw 9338 to authorize the borrowing for improvements to the transportation infrastructure.
Move first reading.
Second.
Call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. Move second reading. I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. Move third reading. I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. Thank you. Next item, please,
And
Madam
this is
Clerk.
first three readings of the Parks Capital Projects Loan Authorization Bylaw 9339, and this is for authorizing borrowing for the park infrastructure improvements.
First reading.
Call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried unanimously.
Move second reading.
I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried unanimously.
Third reading.
I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. Thank you. Next item, please, Madam Clerk.
This item is for first reading of the Heritage Designation Bylaw 9340. This is to designate the interior of the dwelling at 3918, 3918A as a municipal heritage structure.
Move first reading. Second. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. Thank you. Next item, please, Madam Clerk.
This is first reading of zoning amendment bylaw 9341, rezoning the property at 3974 Cedar Hill Road for proposed four-story townhouse development.
Move first reading. Move. Any discussion? Seeing Councilor Durham.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think it's a 4-unit townhouse development, not a 4-story.
Thank you for that.
Good catch. Thank you, Councilor Durham. Any more discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Councilor Sanders is opposed. Motion passes. Councilor Brown opposed. Next item, please, Madam Clerk.
This item is for the first reading of Official Community Plan Amendment Bylaw 9342. This will be for amendments to the Official Community Plan as well as the Rural Saanich Local Area Plan policies with respect to extending the sewer service area for public facilities or parks where there would be significant community benefit.
Move first reading.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried unanimously. Thank you for that. Let's move to the next section of the agenda, F, resolutions for adoption. First item, please, Madam Clerk.
This item is the Lot Kisway Sewage Treatment Strategy. This is for council resolution further to the request that the Lot Kisway site be considered as a candidate for the pending CRD water wastewater management treatment project.
Councilor Plant.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to move that Saanich Council forward this site for consideration by the CRD, Eastside Sewage Committee.
Second. Discussion, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Councilor Haynes, for seconding this. I am not an expert in sewage treatment, and I have said already in the Saanich News that I think we do the due diligence of sending this forward down to the CRD for the professionals to look at. But that's not the end of it. The other component that's super important is that the public have the same opportunity they had with other sites to say what their concerns are. I think if the people think that the ALR is an inappropriate use for this land, they should say that there. It will also then come back here eventually for rezoning. But tonight, it's just about having this put forward for consideration. I want to be very clear. This does not mean I am in favor of this site, nor am I opposed to this site. I think that we should just send it forward, and that when this process of building the sewage treatment plant that we've been talking about for years and we'll be working towards boards for years more. We don't want to look back and say, what if we considered that site? So I would ask council to support that we do send this down only for a review, and that we then give it the same treatment of every other site, and if people wish to speak against it, that they will have that opportunity.
Thank you, Councillor Plant. Councillor Haynes, the seconder.
I'd like to speak to this in support. And what we're dealing with here is to have this site considered amongst all the other sites for technical feasibility, to be evaluated by an expert panel, for social acceptability. There seems to be a little bit of confusion that in actual fact the applicants are not asking to come out of the ALR. They might stay in the ALR if that's the wish of CRD. And in fact, the CRD at soon already have a water treatment plant on ALR in the CRD, which is interesting. Since being on council, there's been a lot of material I've been processing to read, and wise decisions don't come from preempting the outcome at the beginning. If I put that in today's parlance, that means let's include as many sites as people come forward with that are technically feasible and may address the questions we need. We're here today looking at sewage sites because perhaps the previous decision and communication process wasn't optimized. Perhaps there was some preempting at the beginning. We don't know where it may have gone wrong, that we have to redo the system. But as we go forward in the current system, let's have all opportunities on the table for the experts to look at, for our citizens to consider. This decision, as my colleague Councillor Plant said, 10, 20 years down the road, we should be able to look back and say, we got it right. We got it right. With this particular application, it embraces local food. One of the issues we're addressing, we have a task force about to be launched on agriculture and food security. Perhaps this site might answer that, if this is the chosen site. We talk about the use of renewable energy and climate change. This site has a potential client just across the road. One of the issues that we've been told about in technical feasibility is how close a client is for the reusable energy. I will address the remarks made by Catherine Whitworth, and I appreciate Catherine bringing these points forward. I worked with Catherine for 3 years on SCAN, and Catherine is able to drill down and bring up some important questions. On this particular matter, I'd like to clarify that since being on council, I have had advice from our legal staff and from staff that on the issue of conflict, there is no conflict for me. But I do appreciate you bringing that to our attention, and I appreciate Councillor Brownoff saying that she liked the remark. Thank you very much.
Councillor Brownoff?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There's some misunderstanding maybe that we didn't look at this site, but at the CRD they did look at the site and evaluated it high level, and then the CRD board also turned the site down. My colleagues around this table didn't select the site for the technically feasible sites when we put sites forward to the CRD. I was in that meeting, but you didn't select that site. So for me, it's about the ALR, and it's also about the urban containment boundary. Within our OCP, there's a policy that says, do not adopt any bylaw or resolution provided for a major expansion to the urban containment boundary without first obtaining the assent of the electors through a referendum or plebiscite. Opening up the urban containment boundary for this industrial use on farmland, I would say, would have a significant impact on our other policies around maintaining the urban containment boundary as the principal tool for growth management in Saanich. When we looked at the site before, I think one of the biggest concerns was the size of the pipe to get all the raw sewage from the inner harbor out to this site. So if you can imagine trenching or tunneling to rural Saanich of all the raw sewage, it's a significant pipe. And And so we did look at it. It has nothing to do with whether they can put in greenhouses. It has a lot to do for me around the ALR. I don't support an industrial use like this in the ALR, and I don't support opening up the urban containment boundary. So I can't support the motion.
Thank you. Councillor Brown, can you clarify some of the statements you made earlier? You said that it was evaluated at the CRD and the CRD turned it down?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, but that was in camera. Some of it was in a letter, Mr. Mayor, but the evaluation, the dollar amount and stuff, that was in camera. This has always been a public site. It's been in the public since last term. We've talked about it, we've had it at the CRD in public meetings. So this isn't a private in-camera. What was private and in-camera was the evaluation dollar.
Second question I had for you was, you mentioned a bylaw or resolution and the limitations of our OCP.
Within our OCP, under Growth Management, Section 4, do not adopt any bylaw or resolution provided for a major expansion to the urban containment boundary without first obtaining the assent of the electors through a referendum or plebiscite.
Okay, thank you for that. I don't think tonight that we are considering the change of the urban containment boundary. It's simply a motion to forward it to the CRD. So I'm not sure how that would apply. Are there any other members of council? Councillor Bryce.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I would like to thank the presentator because I think it was a well thought out document, and it's mighty tempting to give it consideration and to move it forward. However, because it is in the ALR, I will not be supporting this motion. There are 20 or 30 sites where sewage treatment might occur. We've identified them. Lots of options, combinations will all come out. There are no additional places in the lower island here where we're going to be able to find additional ALR land. What is there now is what will be there forever. And while this might be seen as some as a compatible use, I do not see it that way. And so at this point, I'm going to have to say that on the balance, the issue of the ALR and my determination, as my time here on council, to not have it used for other purposes does not allow me to support this. I can see large areas throughout Saanich where probably in the day, in the 50s and the 60s, good cases were made for the use of ALR land. We pass by them every day. And I'm sure at the moment the cases were very strong, very compelling, and people thought, makes sense, let's do it. Well, we see the sum and substance of that over the years, and it is a very limited land base. And this land is in the ALR. It's not just because somebody dreamt up putting that designation on it. It had to be accepted by the ALC. And it was, and it is in the ALR. And so, because I suspect that there are other combinations of land, or both a centralized or a decentralized system for sewage treatment, I'm not prepared to pass over what I consider to be a very, very strong principle.
Councillor Jordan and then Sanders. And then Workman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This proposal is not new to me, as Councillor Bronoff said. It came up actually even in the last term when things were being considered about the other project that no longer is a go. And at the time, one of the concerns that was brought forward about it was, as Councillor Bronoff again has said, the amount of size of pipe and amount of energy costs in pumping sewage all the way from the Inner Harbor and Clover Point up to this particular site. The comparison was made with the pipeline to Heartland, which I was not in favor of and remain not in favor of because of the remoteness and the pumping cost concern and other things. That was for a very small portion of the total sewage flow and would require probably something like a 6-inch pipe. In this case, we're talking about a pipe that is required to take all the sewage flow that considerable distance. That is a much bigger pipe with measurably much bigger pumping costs and much greater energy use. When I saw this proposal this spring, when the applicants wished to show it to me, and I looked at it, my indication to them was, if this is going to be considered, you need to provide a lot more technical information about what would be the costs and what kind of infrastructure would be necessary. I haven't got that yet. So it makes it difficult for me to support it at this time. There is the issue of the ALR, and I respect that. I noticed the proposal for the sewage plant would be about 12 acres of 30 acres, or hectares, whichever it was. And then there would be a small amount for greenhouse. I worry about what is the fate of the rest of it in this case, and what kinds of applications might come forward as a result. But that's subsidiary. The main concern I have is this in fact technically feasible in terms of the cost and distances and amount of piping and pumping involved. We have a lot of sites that have been put forward that are close to infrastructure within the core and very close to infrastructure. They are clearly technically feasible for that reason. So I'm having some concern with this one and may have some difficulty supporting it. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I call the delegation up to the microphone? Mr. Parks, Mr. Ferguson?
I think if any other member of council wishes to speak first, that might be appropriate.
I was actually hoping that these gentlemen could address your question. The question was raised on the piping costs of going the distance from the two
Point
existing...
of order, Mr. Mayor, I think you would have to ask this council to vote to hear the applicant again, because we've closed off public input. So aren't we?
I was actually going on the direction of our staff that said that the gentleman could come up later at this portion of F1.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, there was a point of clarification that Mr. Parks wanted to make, and so I had indicated that the appropriate time to ask for clarification would be during this discussion.
So it was his clarification, not more information.
Yes, that was what I was asking for. Right. So it's always good to get more information when you can get more clarification than we can get. So as I was saying before, the question was the issue of the cost and the technical challenges of pumping from the existing pumping stations that you showed in your diagram up to the site.
Yes, I'll address that by saying that we purposely see that the elevation of the Watkisway site is 20 meters. So in my terms, in engineering terms, we'll be looking at pumping up to that elevation. The idea of allowing the flows to be collected in an optimized plan, what I was showing in the slides was the proposal to intercept flows in various locations, and actually Saanich is actually in an ideal location geographically to see that being intercepted in various points in the collection system, which currently flows by gravity down to the areas through the city of Victoria. As far as the pipe diameters go, it will be a combination of different pipe diameters. In my preliminary review, the largest pipe diameter that I came up with was an 18-inch pipe. And that would be pumping it out of the Clover Point station up to another intermediate pump station and that point on again. So again, in technical terms, we call that a daisy chain type of system, where we pump from one station to another, to another, to another, eventually to get to the wastewater treatment plant. The advantage of what we see with the Watkis site is that, again, it's on one site, so we eliminate that long corridor that we see going out to Heartland. So certainly, by seeing that there's approximately 20 kilometers less of piping that we would need, you've got to understand that that would result in a significant cost saving. So it needs to be optimized. The collection system is as much a problem statement as the treatment plant. And I heard a lot of your comments about that, and I totally agree with you. We have to look at that. I know the City of Victoria has been looking at it, and Saanich has been looking at that in cooperation with CRD on how to optimize that collection system. The other advantage, I'm talking now about the eastern communities, so I look at the western communities, certainly where we would intercept flows from the western communities results in a reduction in flows that would go currently down to either Clover Point or McLaughlin Point, Macaulay Point. So yes, it is an analysis that needs to be done. There is an analysis that needs to be optimized. And when I look at putting the plant in more of a central location, I'm believing that we can come up with the optimized solution because of the geography and the topography.
Thank you for that. So if this was forwarded from this council to the CRD, ultimately they will make a decision whether it's technically feasible or not. In your opinion, I'm assuming it's technically feasible because you come forward with this proposal.
Yes, it is. When I look at what the site offers, even the natural topography of the site has possibilities for a natural hydraulic grade line through the plant itself. So it means we could go from treatment level to treatment level in a gravity situation. By doing that again, I can see cost savings. I mentioned also about the fact that we don't have to dress the site up because it's not in full view of the public, and that would again be a cost saving. Then we can see that the discharge out of the plant, we looked at obviously the greenhouse operation. The proponent that we talked to has studied the need for a greenhouse facility on Vancouver Island and has been looking at it for some time in the past. They are quite prepared to step up and make that a reality so that those products would not have to be shipped over to the island and we could grow our own food here. So we certainly have a willing proponent who's standing beside us and has other facilities that actually use these type of waste products and has experience in doing this. So in putting all that together, certainly the economic side of it is addressed. Certainly when we look at the social side of it, with the fact that we are looking at food security. And I think that those components together, for me, when I look at it, hit a triple bottom line. That's why I believe it's a good candidate site.
Thank you. And the other question that was raised for clarification was one of issue of cost. Have you done any kind of cost estimate for this?
We haven't done a detailed cost estimate, and I've looked into trying to understand the costing that does exist, and I'll be quite blunt, I'm confused at the numbers that are currently floating. It's very difficult to find the basis for the costs that I see today. That's why I do believe that this plant will stand on its own merit. When I look at the technical solutions that exist with other proponent sites, I believe this will stack up quite nicely.
All right, thank you. Councillor Dermott?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for you. You just mentioned that the largest pipe you saw was 18 inches. I'm fully aware, you're talking about moving all the sewage in the CRD up here to this point. Unless you're talking about multiple pipes going to the site from different places, which then requires pumping from multiple different locations. I'm well aware of the CRD collector system. The pipes are much larger than 18 inches. And we have a situation right now of overflows from time to time because the system becomes clogged up. I really don't know how you can create a force main that carries all the CRD current volume through 18 inches, but perhaps maybe there's a solution, I don't know.
Yes, Councillor, I mean, it's true. I'm not saying that the entire flow would go there. You're entirely correct when you're looking at the fact there would be multiple pump stations. I see interception sewers that would reduce flows to one major pump station or two major pump stations. Intercepting the western flows is a reduction. So it's a combination of all of that.
Thank you. Councillor Sanders?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This site is not a new site. I did sit on the core liquid waste last term, and the discussion came up continuously where we're going to propose to put sewage treatment on ALR land, and continuously the committees did not support sewage treatment on ALR land. Also, in the previous term, we were looking at a centralized plant, and if we're going to be true to the process of decentralized plants, then this very one large very plant does not meet that. We've already talked about, and my colleagues have mentioned, that this will bring all the sewage from the whole region and have to pump it up to into rural Saanich. When I was on the committee previously, I asked the question about this site when we looked at it and about the size of the pipes, and I was told that it would be massive and the impacts to bring that flow through, piped it from the inner harbor and such, up to the site would be very expensive, and make huge impacts. I hear recently that just so that we can sort of visualize what this pipe would look like, the comment was you can drive a smart car through it. So that's what we're looking at, not 18-inch pipes. So that was one thing that contributed to that. When we looked at our technically feasible sites, we talked about this site, and the one issue was it was an ALR, and we can still not support that. And the other things we were also mentioned was the impacts that perhaps archaeological sites on this property. There was some comments from the presenters about First Nations. However, there's not been a review to see if there is some First Nations and our original pioneers, some archaeological sites there. There has possibly a cemetery. We're just putting the Great Flower Bridge in. It was amazing from finding one artifact from the past. We ended up with, I think it was 26 burials through that process. So we cannot preclude what was there. So I will not be supporting this because I stand firmly by supporting the ALR. I would not want to be in contravention of our own OCP of extending the urban containment boundary, and we have to go to our public for that. So I'm certainly not supportive of sending this site down to the CRD.
Thank you, Councillor Sanders. Just to clarify, did you say earlier that this sewage committee, the CRD that you sat on, did not approve of the ALR land for this kind of use?
We had many discussions about ALR land coming in, and over it was we did not support putting sewage treatment on ALR land.
Was any motion passed by the committee?
I would have to default to my colleagues. We're nodding, yes, so I would.
Councillor Workland.
Thank you very much. I sat on that committee for 7 years, and probably some of the motions that were made in camera, so how they went, I don't think we can really talk about it here. But I would like to say we're not building a plant here tonight. And like the committee made the statement that we will look at any site in the municipality that would take a treatment plant. Not that it would work, but it would actually hold a treatment plant. And when you look at some of the sites that were chosen, they will, no question, they would take a treatment plant. And whether it's at Panorama, wherever, so to speak, physically, it would fit on. Whether it made common sense and support by the community is quite another thing. I have to say on this, I have strongly supported the use of non-agricultural land for a treatment plant for some time. It's just where I'm coming from. And it always seems like there is a real concern when we use the word agricultural land. And I've often thought there's a reason why we have an agricultural land commission, and that's because there was land put in that is not usable for agriculture. And in this whole process, and it's something I say again and again, whatever choice we make in this whole process, there are going to be trade-offs. And the only thing we have to ensure is that we're trading up and not down. And probably my biggest concern, and this is where I do have mixed feelings, we have sent a message out that we do not want to see agricultural land as part of the mix. And when a one-off comes to us, it becomes very difficult to accept one and not other possible sites that would be out there. And that's probably my biggest concern. But more than that, I think it's important that we let our residents decide, after they've heard the facts, whether they want to use agricultural land, non-productive agricultural land, whether they want to use whatever. And I think it was the sense of the committee that the whole process was going to be open to the public. They would be very much involved. And coming back to the whole amalgamation question that we had on the ballot, I think for many people, they just wanted a say about it. And not that they were for it or against it, but in the end, they wanted to have a say on it. And I hope we don't get caught twice in not allowing our residents to have a say on where they'd like to see a potential treatment plant. And that's about all I have to say on it. In fact, we have nothing to fear by putting it out. Phase 2 is to look at it from a technical point of view. Do any of these sites or which site works the best? And if this site happens to make the grade, then it'll come back to our residents again to have a decision on whether they want to see it there.